Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about under the heading of Democrats getting stuff done. And you gotta give Democrats credit. They are getting stuff done, and I'm checking the I-95 work cam. This was a brilliant move by Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, because you remember there was a bridge collapsed on I-95 in Philadelphia, carried about 160,000 vehicles every single day. It's been closed since June 11th, when a truck flipped over, caught on fire, melted this overpass, and you've now got the governor going, hey, 2 weeks. 2 weeks it's going to get open. And he did a brilliant thing. I talked about this last week. Did a brilliant thing. So we're going to put it up on the web. And you're going to be able to watch these people doing their jobs. We're going to watch these people getting stuff done. We're going to watch it in real time, how we're rebuilding this country. And good on Shapiro for doing that. Over the weekend, the president was in Philadelphia, said there's no more important job to the country right now, as far as he's concerned, and highlighted the fact that these union workers are out there 24/7 busting their behinds to get this main thoroughfare in this country, this main economic thoroughfare open again. And look, the fact that they're doing this about time. My mind goes to this place. Can you imagine if the Trump folks were this functional, the kind of PR they would be throwing out around this? Oh, it's the greatest ever, and how they were doing the most fantastic ever. Look, these guys are showing up, doing the job, and this is, like I said, this is good stuff. And I've been watching the progress, and it's really quite remarkable and quite amazing what we can do as a country when we get our hard hats on, when we put that's the red hat, blue hat stuff aside, we get to work. This important stuff, which is why I had to throw this up there. Had to throw up the I-95 bridge work, and it's one of those things where this is what we should be focusing on: rebuilding our country. Sad reality, though, we're in this moment, and the story of today. And there's a couple of big ones that I'm going to get to, and I want to get your thoughts on. But the big story today: Sam Alito, Supreme Court Justice. We find. And again, not shocked, not surprised. We know this. Accepted and failed to report luxury travel at the behest of a billionaire. And what's interesting about this is ProPublica came out with a piece and went through all of what we already know. You get these justices like Alito. You get these justices like Thomas. You get these justices like former, deceased Justice Antonin Scalia. They go on these extravagant trips. And, it's funded by, ideologically same thinking billionaires. Interestingly enough, set up by a right-wing, kind of foundation, kind of political arm that pushes judicial people into places. It seems well coordinated, because it is. And this ProPublica piece goes through this on how this Leonard Leo at the Federalist Society is part of this whole conduit between these billionaires and these justices, and how they groom, how they do all this stuff. And it should have just flopped, like every piece like this does, because, well, they don't answer to it. They're above it. They're the elites. But Alito, oh no, Alito had to preempt the ProPublica piece by putting a pre-buttle, a wine bottle, an excuse in the Wall Street Journal. Yes, went to the investor class's newspaper and made his case. And his case was simple. And I loved it. You can read the whole thing. It's a lot of wasted time, a lot of wasted jargon, legalese. He's making a legal case, but at the end of it, his argument is brilliant. His final argument is, Hey, I could have taken commercial flights. I could have, but it would have imposed substantial cost and inconvenience on the U.S. Marshal Service and the deputy who would have to come along with me and the security. It was much cheaper for me to go with this billionaire because had I not gone, here it is. And I quote, as for the flight, Mr. Singer and others had already made arrangements to fly to Alaska when I was invited shortly before the event, and I was asked whether I would like to fly there in a seat that, as far as I am aware, would have otherwise been vacant. It was my understanding that this would not impose any extra cost on Mr. Singer. Now, here's the thing. If your kid came to you and go, we snuck into the baseball game and, we ate all the hot dogs and we stole all this stuff and we did all, but the seat would have been empty anyway. We were just filling the seat because, it was there. Would you have fallen for that? Of course not. But again, he wants to change the narrative. He wants to, this very technical legal stuff, when the reality is our billionaire class has such outweighed influence on our legal system, on our political system, on our legal and our political system, because, well, these organizations like the Federalist Society and others, look, this is where money in politics is the problem. This is where Citizens United is the problem. This is where, giving all of this wealth to a handful of people who have such outweighed control over our process is the problem. And the weird thing is this guy's trying to go, no. I'm above reproach. Don't you think I'm of sufficient intelligence that I know when I'm being played? And that's not the point. The point here is that Alito and the Gorsuches and the Thomases and all of these people, they were groomed. For decades, they were groomed in law firms and in colleges and through these foundations and through these front groups to become these ideologues. It's not that Paul Singer could call him and say, Judge Alito, I want you to decide this. It's no, I know what you're going to think before you think it. I have groomed you into this justice, this robo-justice that is going to get me my decisions. That's going to harm working people and going to side with corporate America and the moneyed interest. And they do it time and time again. That, my friends, that is the point of all of this. And the fact that you've got Alito trying to make this case that somehow, he's above this is ridiculous. Now you go, but Rick, can you point to cases where corporate America has dominated our courts? Oh, I am so happy you asked. Because the reality is this Supreme Court for the last 20 plus years has been the corporate court. This has been, the Roberts Court has been the U.S. Chamber of Commerce's pocketed court. They are the go-to when they want to make sure that they get what they want, which means more money, more power, more control, and less ability for working people to fight for better wages, hours, conditions. And look, there's a couple to pop off my head. The Janus decision is one that said, we're going to overturn more than 40 years of decided law. Now remember, my good friends, John Roberts said he was all about balls and strikes, decided law, stare decisis. I'm not going to make things up as we go. And what they do out of whole cloth, they turned the entire public sector workforce into a no rights at work workforce. Oh, we should have the right to work. It's like saying that someone who's drowning has the right to swim. This is what has happened to our system. And they did this on a purely partisan, purely Federalist Society line 5-4 vote. This, again, another one of those moments where the power and the influence of the moneyed interests dominate those of the workers. You go and you look at what's happened to other workers, and the Epic system cases that came out years ago that basically put forced arbitration clauses into every worker's pocket. I still remember my aunt calling me, and this has been years ago. She called me and said, I've been working at this company for 20 years. The boss just walked in and said, here's a piece of paper. You sign it or there's the door. And she goes, what is it? I don't know. And I asked her to read it to me. And I said, well, that's a forced arbitration clause. That's saying that you don't have the right to sue them for anything. You have to go to an arbitrator. And I explained the system of how arbitration works and how it's heavily weighted toward the employer because they've always got attorneys, they've always got legal advice, and very, very rarely do workers have the same leverage and power. This is a screw job for working people. This is why every worker needs a union. This is why every person should have a contract. But this is what the Supreme Court imposed on every working person in this country because the Leonard Leos of the world, the Federalist Societies of the world, the Chamber of Commerces of the world, all of these moneyed, powered interests, that's what they want. They want powerless workers. So when she said, well, do I have to sign it? I said, well, you have two choices. You sign it or there's the door. That's what our Supreme Court has said. So you have to sign your rights away. And time again, this court has been the corporate court. Yeah, all of the other stuff, fine. The social stuff, all of that, yeah, they're right where they're supposed to be because those are the tools to keep us stupid and to keep us pitted against each other. Those are the tools to rip us apart. The abortion, the same-sex marriage, all of that divisive stuff that we're never going to absolutely agree on. They know that. They throw the red meat out there so they can rob us blind, and it's working. It's working so well. Which is why, again, this case to me, situation to me, is so incredibly important. Now, as we've had on this program, Sheldon Whitehouse came on and talked about the fact that there needs to be oversight. There needs to be someone paying attention, and they're going to move ahead, I guess, sometime after the 4th of July. Dick, the senator from Illinois, Whitehouse, the senator from Rhode Island, they're going to start marking up a bill to start holding these justices accountable. Their quote today, which I think is incredibly important, the highest court in the land should not have the lowest ethical standards. You think? We give these 9 people in robes so much power, so much deference, so much ability to control what happens, and yet they abuse it at every opportunity. And then they're shocked when we go, maybe you shouldn't be taking $500,000 vacations, Justice Thomas, on a billionaire's yacht. Maybe you should be taking a $100,000 flight to a remote part of Alaska to take a $1,000 a day fishing trip that average every working people could never afford. But your justification is, well, the seat was going to be empty. What did you have me do? Not go? It's time for working people to come together in this moment, and these are the things that are important. So I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Is this much ado about nothing? Is this something that we should be getting worked up about? I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Now, look, it's not just our Supreme Court justices who are lining their pockets and taking stuff from the billionaire class. It's not just Alito and Thomas and Scalia and the rest of them. It's not. It's all of them. It's the fact that money has permeated our political system and political favors. Well, you know, it wasn't a quid pro quo. We're buddies. We're friends. We go to the same country clubs that they pay the fees for. We take the same vacations that they pay for. We go to the same restaurants that they pay for, because it's hospitality. Or it was a donation. And I look at Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, who now the story has come out that evidently Ron DeSantis is an avid golfer. Something about, crazy Republicans and golf seem to be, there's a common thread, but evidently a billionaire in Florida, a guy who honestly has lots of business before the state, evidently he donated, and it was so nice of him, out of the goodness of his heart, donated to Ron DeSantis a golf simulator worth tens of thousands of dollars to be installed in the governor's mansion back in 2019. Because, hey, the pandemic was coming, needed to make sure that Ron had something to do, because, hey, it's hard to get out on the links in Florida. So we have no idea how much it actually cost, but installed this thing worth tens of thousands of dollars in this private pool cabana. So DeSantis could practice his short game, could get his strokes down. Now, there's no record who paid for it. DeSantis didn't pay for it. The state didn't pay for it. We find out this Mortzia Hosani is the guy who paid for it. It's undisclosed. Nobody knows anything about it. Never reported. None of that stuff. But, it's one of these things where it's perfectly legal because we think we're following the rules because no one's going to hold them accountable. Now, this is the weird moment of where we're at. If you or I would have done any of this stuff, I mean, look at the Alito thing for a second. If you or I had done any of that, we'd be screwed. We'd be in trouble. If a federal worker, think about this, if a federal worker got caught doing any of the stuff that Alito and Thomas and them have done. If a state worker got a gift like, a multi-$1,000 golf simulator to put in their basement, what do you think would happen to them? Now, on the federal level, there are strict ethical standards for the janitor. If you're a janitor or someone working in the dining hall, there are strict ethical standards about accepting gifts in exchange for official actions. The kind of things that could, I think the federal bribery statute's like 15 years in prison and a fine 3 times the value of the bribe. So this is one of these things. Maybe we start holding some of these people accountable. Maybe we start, paying attention to where the money goes. And for me, that's what it always comes back to. Ideology aside, take your red hats and your blue hats and shove them. It's about the green. And this is where Rupert Murdoch was right. It's not about red, blue. It's about green. It's about the money. It's about what these people have put in their pockets. And the kind of power that we give them. And the kind of control that they have over our lives. I've been saying for the longest time, our Supreme Court, they're moving us back to the days of the Lochner era and worse. This idea that there can be no laws to protect minimum wage or maximum hour laws or working conditions or any of that stuff. Bringing back freedom. We're going to have freedom. We're going to have freedom to work in poverty, freedom to work for horrible people. We're going to have freedom to work in dangerous conditions because it's our liberty, it's our freedom. We can do these things because we're Americans. And that's what Americans do, or at least that's what they're trying to get us to buy. And the frustrating part in all of this is that I'm not seeing the kind of pushback that we would deserve, that they should deserve, that we should be heaping upon them. Instead, we get nonsense. We get Ron DeSantis. And this, I got to play this clip of Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis was on one of these Christian Broadcasting Network interviews. And he's, wow, the worst pandering possible, I think. It really is quite remarkable when you listen to this. This is Governor Ron DeSantis.
In terms of throughout history,
yeah.
I mean, I think could I have been there with Jesus's disciples? I mean, these are people who, Peter's just fishing one day, and all of a sudden, this guy comes up to him, catches all the fish, and says, you're going to be fisher. I want you to be a fisher of men. Come with me. And so these guys all went out. And they dedicated their life to spreading the gospel, and they all were killed for, they tried to kill John. John ended up, being able to survive, but I mean, the intent was to put him to death too. And, to talk about what that was like, talk about what their impressions are, what of that. I look back at that and would love to have been able to be there with them. In terms of,
wow, I would have loved to have been there with them. I would have just loved to have been right there with Paul and John, and as they're being executed, but hanging right on one of the third crosses over there with Jesus. I mean, wow. But the thing is there are people watching just going, oh, he's such a good Christian. He wanted to go back, and it would be, he wants to be able to sit around the campfire and tell stories of what it was like to be murdered. I'm my gosh, the level of pandering. But again, we fall for it. We fall for this nonsense. These are people that have been put into political power to, well, it really is, when you stop and think about it, remarkable, the world that we are in this moment. And it's people like DeSantis, it's the Trumps, it's all of these politicos who have been groomed for years to be able to raise enough money from these billionaires to be able to get into these positions and do the things that billionaires want, that the moneyed interests want. And for me, it's across political lines. It's not about red hat, blue hat. The extremes are the extremes. For me, it's what happens to working people. And you look at the policies that have come out, and this is the bottom line in this. You look at the decisions that have come out of the Supreme Court. You look at the policies that come out of Congress. You look at what the Republicans are doing right now at every opportunity to harm working people, and it's all bad. And it's meant to make us angry. It's meant to make us throw up our hands and feel hopeless. It's meant to make us be despaired and turn against our neighbor and blame someone else. When we know who to blame, it's those folks at the top. It's not right, left. It's up, down. It's always been. It always will be. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1943. That was the day United Mine Workers President John L. Lewis issued strike orders at the nation's mines, calling out more than 500,000 miners. The third general coal strike in 3 months defied the wartime no-strike pledge. Miners raised several demands, including wage increases, an end to the dangerous third shift, and portal-to-portal pay. High wartime inflation only worsened miners' already low wages. Early that spring, Lewis denounced the mine owners, the War Labor Board, and the Little Steel formula used to calculate wartime wages. He warned the formula meant starvation for workers and the end of collective bargaining. By April, President Roosevelt had ordered wage freezes. Miners began walking out of the pits even before the strike call, as soon as the War Labor Board handed down their decision on June 19th. The board had rejected all of the miners' demands. The United Mine Workers responded stating, quote, "No member and no officer of the United Mine Workers of America would be so destitute of principle and so devoid of honor as to sign or execute such an infamous yellow dog contract." Though the United Mine Workers were forced to call off the strike the next day, some miners continued to stay out in protest. 4 days later, Congress passed the dreaded Smith-Conley Act, dubbed the Slave Labor Bill, in response to the strike. Throughout the summer, miners across the country would rage against the government for threatening them with conscription and jail time if they dared refuse the terms of the decision. By November, the miners would walk out a fourth time and finally win many of their demands, at least from the War Labor Board. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
The six-person majority of far-right Supremes, who presently dominate America's judicial system, seems intent on demonstrating that having a seat on our Supreme Court does not mean there is anything supreme about them. Consider one bottom-line measure of character that is central to the court's integrity: financial ethics. This simply requires the judges to file annual reports to reveal any sources of outside income and gifts, thus providing some minimal assurance to regular folks that the eminences are not taking personal payments from moneyed interests seeking favorable court rulings. But unlike all other top government officials, Supreme Court justices have a loosey-goosey system for reporting financial conflicts of interest. It's called Trust Us. Thus, for years, Clarence Thomas has been taking millions of dollars worth of gimmies from a right-wing corporate billionaire while voting to impose this benefactor's plutocratic agenda as the law of the land. Yet, in 2 decades of financial reports to the people, there is not a whisper from His Supremeness that he has regularly pocketed a wealth of gratuities from this special friend. Or take John Roberts, the Chief Justice, who poses as a paragon of judicial independence while aggressively pressing an agenda of corporate supremacy over the common good. While he's not known to take payments from corporate interests, his wife does. She's been paid millions of dollars in commissions to recruit lawyers for firms that have business before Justice Roberts. Yet, until this special interest enrichment of his family was recently uncovered, Roberts never mentioned it in his annual reports. Meanwhile, every federal official must agree to abide by a code of ethical behavior, with the exception of 9 officials who have exempted themselves, saying, "Trust us." Yes, the Supremes. This is Jim Hightower saying, since the court refuses to fix itself, the people must. To help, go to fixthecourt.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, all you know what broke loose today on the House floor. Evidently, Kevin McCarthy has lost control of the crazy caucus. They have voted to censure Adam Schiff. And again, this is supposed to be the worst of the worst crimes. This is what they didn't censure someone like George Santos, which was kind of the punchline of the day from Representative Dan Goldman, who said, "You're the party of George Santos, and who are you holding accountable?" The guy is an alleged and acknowledged liar and indicted, and you protect him every day. Don't lecture us with your protection and your defense of Donald Trump. It's pathetic, and it's beneath you and beneath this body. He said the GOP really isn't trying to hold anyone accountable, especially not Schiff. They're just trying to score cheap political points. And that's what this really was about. It was all about, we need to have this grandstand because they had Durham come in to testify because this was supposed to be, the hoax, the Russia hoax, Russia hoax. And Durham was supposed to knock it out of the park Not so much. He testified. Yeah, it was a long hearing. And to be honest, there was nothing new. No smoking guns, no shock, no headlines, no breaking, this or that. Basically, just insert your talking point, pick your hat, insert talking point, and that's where it went. Because we already have pretty much all we need to know. Did Russia interfere in the 2016 election? Yes, we know that. The reality is, and look, there have been several investigations conducted into whether the Trump campaign colluded with Russia. There is. Now, is there conclusive? Was there a smoking gun? No, there's not. But there were numerous contacts between the Trump campaign and Russian officials. We know this. There was the big one in June of 2016 where you had Dumb Jr., you had Kush, you had Manafort in there with the Russian lawyer because, hey, we got damaging stuff. We got stuff. And I love how Durham today tried to kind of poo-poo that away, saying, well, everyone does that. Everyone does it. No, not quite. Not everyone takes a meeting with a Russian asset. That's unusual. Really unusual. In fact, if it had, and I remember when this story broke, we had people coming on going, look, had that come to us and I was running a campaign, immediately we'd be going to the Department of Justice. Immediately we'd be going to the FBI. Immediately we'd be reporting, which they didn't do. And look, there have been people who were convicted. I mean, there are links there. It's there. So to say it's all a hoax is a nice talking point if you're wearing the red hat. But it doesn't hold up to scrutiny. And, the sad reality is, I look at what the Trump people have gotten, the kind of kid glove treatment that they have gotten all through this, from the beginning. And it does show that there are two justice systems. One for working people and one for our elites, of which Trump is an elite. The fact that it took a year for the FBI to move on this guy and say, hey, we want our stuff back, is quite remarkable. They did everything they could possibly do. They did backflips to not get in this position. They begged, they pleaded, they did everything they could possibly do to not be here. And the thing is today's hearings was supposed to be more right-wing talking points of, Russia was all a hoax, and Donald's a victim, and how everyone was stacked against Trump, and how everybody was piling on. It's the victim. I mean, it's amazing how well they play the V card, which is weird because you think of Trump and his brand. He's supposed to be a winner. He's supposed to be the champion. He's supposed to be the guy that goes out there and fights and wins no matter what. And yet all I hear is whine and complain and poor woe is me, pitiful me. Now look, stop with the hoax talking point. There were multiple investigations at every level of our intelligence apparatus. There was a Senate investigation, a Senate Intelligence Committee investigation, Republican-led. A U.S. House Intelligence Committee investigation. There was the Mueller report that documented 100 points of working together. Call it collusion, call it coordination, call it cooperation, call it whatever you want, but they were there. It is clearly stated that the Russian government, the Russian Federation of Intelligence Services, they interfered, period. Putin wanted it, ordered it, they engaged in it. It's that simple. And yet you still have this attempt to rewrite. The FSB hacked and leaked Democratic Party emails. They did that, leaked documents. All of the social media stuff that happened. You cannot then go back and say, no, it's all a hoax, all bad, all a hoax. All of the attempts to hack into state and local election infrastructure happened. You cannot go and rewrite that. But they're trying. And you have to give them credit. They are trying. And they're trying to create an environment where they want us to believe that somehow the justice system is heavily heavily coming down on them. You know, it's like the guy yesterday, I was convicted because of my belief in God. North Carolina came after me because I believe in God. No, they came after you because you took a utility knife, a box cutter, to your son's willy. You home circumcised your child with a box cutter. That's why they came after you, not because you believe in God. The level of victimhood. Oh, they came after me because I had these classified documents in boxes that had my stuff. Yes, you had classified documents. You just admitted it. And what I want to know, all of those subpoenas, all of those seizures of people's cell phones, my congressman, Scott Pardon Me Perry, what came of them seizing his cell phone? What was on that cell phone that made the FBI and the Department of Justice go, hey, we want this? All of those cell phones, Giuliani, that Victoria Toesing, Michael McDonald, my guy, John Eastman, Jeffrey Clark. I mean, Mike Lindell. Have we heard from Mike Lindell lately? Is Frank TV still up? I want to know what was in there. I want to know the lies and all that stuff that came up. I want to know what was on there. And maybe we're still going to find out, but this far down the road, this is where I'm struggling. I'm struggling with, we have an elite class, someone like Trump who has never been told no in his life, who believes that he's entitled to whatever he wants. He can step on and crush whatever he wants. And I'm struggling with the fact that there are working people who go, that's our guy. Without understanding that the people that he's going to step on and crush are them too. I told the story yesterday of my ex-wife's boss and playing basketball against him, and this idea that no one should ever call a foul on him and he should be able to foul everyone. He's entitled to do whatever he wanted on that court. He was the king of the court. It was his. And when someone finally knocked him down, me, nobody on the court knew what to do or how to react. And I think we're kind of in this moment. The Republican Party is shocked that someone has finally knocked a dear leader off the perch. They're trying to defend it because they don't know what's going to happen to them because of all of the things that they've been a party to. All of the things that they've put themselves in. Stop and think about all the lawyers who've left Trump's employ, who've had to lawyer up themselves, all of the people who have worked for Trump. And Bret Baier did a great job. Look, I'm generally not a huge Bret Baier fan. Of the Fox people, he's the best. But when he said, look, you hired all these people, and all these people think you're horrible. You brought all of these people in, and all of them are saying, no, don't vote for him again. And his response, well, those are just disgruntled employees. I hired 10 to 1 better than that. This is a moment. This is a moment where we had better start paying attention, and really coming back to some bit between the curbs. The dear leader stuff. Now look, I want Trump to run. I'm telling you, I'm very clear about this. Been clear from the very beginning. I want Trump to be the Republican candidate. This idea that Democrats are fighting against Donald Trump, they're indicting him because they don't want him to be the candidate. Nonsense. I think the only way Biden is the candidate in 2024 is if it's Trump. If Trump goes down, I don't know that a primary challenger doesn't pop up. But here's the thing. I want Trump to stand for election. I want the American people to see who and what he is, and then to show us who we are as a people. Is this who we really are? Look, I get the fantasy. I got the narrative in 2016. I've said this before. I was one of the first people who said Trump was going to win because of the narrative he spun for the forgotten, for the people who were the struggling, the working class who Democrats forgot, Republicans have been stomping all over and have been left behind. I got it early because I saw it in my family. He didn't deliver. He was never going to deliver. He was never going to be able to deliver. But now there's a chance for those folks to wake up and go, hey, maybe this wasn't the right choice. And to actually then make a choice that's going to move us in the right direction. And look, I like Joe Biden. I think Biden, policy-wise, has done an outstanding job. I think he has done an incredible job. Is he a great candidate? No. He's not. He's not a good candidate at all on the stump. But that's not why I vote for him. I vote for him because the policies he's bringing. Do I care if he can deliver a line? No. Do I care if he stumbles over statements and says things that you go, I don't know what that meant? No, not even a little bit. It's the policies. It's the direction. It's the fact that he's somebody who's going to, policy-wise, executive order-wise, move and fight for working people. That is the key. So all of the social media stuff of him stumbling over words or saying God save the Queen, which I can't figure out either, I don't care about. I care about, there's a bridge in Philadelphia that's being rebuilt. There's an overpass being rebuilt, and it's going to be done quickly. Going to put people to work, going to get a region back open. I care about those thousands of projects across this country that are going to be built. I care about those jobs that are created and then being union jobs. And that those union jobs having a reverberating effect through the local economy to create even more jobs. That's what I care about. I want to hear your thoughts, though. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back with some more. Stick around. If you miss any portion of the program, make sure you grab the podcast. Wherever you find your favorite podcast, you'll find ours. Back after this.
Phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1877. That was the day that 10 Irish miners were hung in Pennsylvania. They were part of a group of 20 who had been sentenced to death for allegedly being part of the Molly Maguires, a group of alleged radical Irish miners. Miners were on strike in the Schuylkill County anthracite coal region. The Mollies were accused of perpetrating violence and murder against the mine owners. Newspapers helped to rile up anger against the striking Irish miners. A Pinkerton detective infiltrated the group, and his testimony doomed those he accused to the gallows. Since the hangings, many have questioned his testimony and the cases made against the miners. But at the time, many newspapers celebrated the hangings. On the day of the executions, the New York Tribune called the men, quote, the wild beasts of the collieries of eastern Pennsylvania. The Carbon Advocate of Lehighton, Pennsylvania, declared the majesty of the law has been vindicated. The community breathes more freely now that these men who feared neither the laws of God or man have met their doom. The day has gone down in labor history as the Day of the Rope, or Black Thursday. The message of the hanging was meant to be sent to all who would dare stand up against the mine owners. In 1979, the governor of Pennsylvania posthumously pardoned John Blackjack Kehoe, one of the alleged leaders of the Molly.
Down the mines, no sunlight shines, those pits, they're black as hell. In mud and slime, they do their time. It's Paddy's prison cell. And they curse the day they try.
Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
So, shocker of all shockers, Elon Musk's a dirtbag. Shocker. I know. Evidently, a lawsuit has been filed claiming that Twitter. You remember when Elon took over Twitter and they fired a bunch of people, saying, if you're not willing to work a gazillion hours a week and dedicate your existence to Twitter, we don't need you. And he said he got rid of 70% of the people, or whatever that number he said was. And the idea of just slash and burn. And they didn't replace a lot of things, and they don't do a lot of things. And Twitter has diminished over his tenure. This lawsuit is saying that, hey, when that happened, they promised all of the workers who stayed, and I remember this. They told people who were leaving, we'll give you severance packages. I don't remember that happening, but they said the people would stay. We're going to give you enormous bonus. In fact, I think, as the guy, this Mark Schobinger, points out, he was the senior director of compensation, left the company last month, and filed this class action, I guess, in San Francisco yesterday. Said that before and after Musk purchased Twitter, the company promised employees that they would get a 50% target bonus in 2022. Evidently, it didn't happen. Could be, and look, in Elon's defense, he's only the richest man in the world. Maybe didn't have the money laying around. I mean, because you bought Twitter for what, $44 billion? It's down into the maybe 20. So he's lost more than half of the value. And look, I keep telling people with the blue check, stop paying him, and we'll go even further down. But now, evidently, this money has not materialized, and he is accusing in this lawsuit Twitter of breach of contract. Now, interestingly enough, in much the Elon Musk way, evidently Twitter does not have a spokesperson or someone who would respond to these kind of stories, and they responded to the newspaper's request for comment with a poop emoji. And you go, yeah, that I hope they bring. I hope that's their filing in court. I hope that comes before a judge. and this goes. Now, here's the weird thing. This is where I bring this back to our Supreme Court. Because this guy is proposed a class action lawsuit. A class action lawsuit of all of the interested parties who got cheated out of this bonus that was promised, this target bonus that was promised. If you come, you do all this extra work, you'll get this. Our Supreme Court has ruled that this kind of class action, not the way to go. That each one of those workers who have been cheated, that they would have to file individual arbitration cases, not lawsuits. Again, this is moving back around to our Alito conversation. This idea that, there are lawsuits, there are tons of lawsuits already out there, but our Supreme Court years ago decided that these class action lawsuits, and this was the Concepcion versus AT&T case, was one of them. And again, I'm not a lawyer, don't pretend to be, but I do understand how this came about. Evidently, AT&T cheated people out of a little bit of money, little small amount of money, but millions of people. And you're not going to file a lawsuit over $20, but 1 million of you will, 10 million of you will, and this is what happened. And the court said, nope, you're going to have to file those individually. And this is how we ended up moving down this road to where class actions have been kind of pushed to the wayside, and now everyone's going to have to file their own case. And as the article points out, there are thousands of individual arbitration cases already out there from the mass layoffs that happened under Musk's tenure last year. This, again, looking at what our Supreme Court does, how it trickles down to working people. You go, wow, these are just Twitter employees. These are employees who were promised compensation, who are going to be screwed. They're going to be. They're probably going to lose because the system is rigged against them. You go into these arbitration situations where the employer has heavy weight in who the arbitrator is. And look, arbitrators are like anybody else. They know what side the butter's on. They know who's paying the bills. They know who's keep putting their kids through school. They know who's got putting food on the table. And what they also know is, Twitter's going to have lawyers, lots of them. And each one of these thousands of people, do you think they're going to be able to afford it? Think they're going to be able to afford the best legal representation and the best legal minds to be able to whittle out of them a couple of $1,000? Of course not. You're going to get guys like me who are going to go in there and I'm going to tell the truth. I'm going to be honest. And that's going to be enough because that's the working class mentality. That truth matters, that justice matters, that being right matters. That if I go in there and I say the boss, a crummy boss, promised me I was going to get a bonus if I did this, this, and this. I did this, this, and this. And he reneged, that an arbitrator, a judge, that someone's going to go, you're right. That's not how it always works. And we know from the numbers, overwhelmingly in arbitration cases, arbitrators decide on the side of employers simply because of the representation part of it. And this, again, another thing brought to us by our Supreme Court. Now, the other part of this is Twitter employees should have been unionized from the start. There should have been a written contract. There should have been all of these things that say, you know what, if this happens, then this. That's what contracts do. That's why every CEO in this country has a contract. It's amazing to me that working people go, yeah, no, it's okay for the CEO of my company to have a contract. So when they fire him, he gets $1 million or $100 million, or like Robert Nardelli at Home Depot, $220 million to get fired. No, that's okay. But me, no, they'll just show me the door. So I'm looking at this, and again, this is one of those moments where a crummy boss has this outweighed power and the workers don't. Because for me, this is that kind of cut and dry situation. Now, of course, they want to make this about, it's about Twitter. It's about, rich, high priced, tech workers, still workers, still people who come in and give hours of their lives to be able to support their families. And the sooner we realize and realign our allegiances and move out of our silos on whatever red hat, blue hat, and we align it back into the way that my grandparents' generation believed, it's about how you put food on the table, we're going to continue to see stuff like this happen to us. And there's going to continue to be a political system that's going to continue to do it to us. Because as my 8th grade government teacher said, government decides who gets what. If you elect people who they have the ear of the wealth class, who do you think they're going to pander to? I had a friend who was a congressman for years, said, look, nobody ever bought my vote, but they got my ear 15 minutes at a time every time I had to ask for a campaign contribution. Every time I had to ask, a rich business owner, hey, I need a couple of bucks to stay in power. Well, what are your thoughts on the minimum wage? Well, I'd like to raise the minimum wage. Well, I'm not so fond of that. Well, maybe we could lower the raising of the minimum. This is how this happens. And this is why, as my grandfather always said, if a rich guy's going to take a buck out of his pocket to tell you don't need something, you better spend 2 to get it. We better start spending time, effort, energy, money, resources, language, talking to our neighbors to claw back what we've lost. Want to hear your thoughts, though? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break, right back.
We're talking about the heat index reaching anywhere between 110 to 120.
Blackouts and deadly storms slam troubled Texas grid amid early heat wave. Another insurer ditches Florida as hurricane season gets underway. Plus,
what it can help doing is to make sure that we take pressure off the ocean in the face of climate change.
UN members adopt first ever treaty to protect marine life on the high seas.
All of those adventures on the high seas straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
Every time it's real hot, climate change. Every time it's real cold, climate change. When it rains a lot, it's because of climate change. And you guessed it, Canada, with burning forests, 400 separate fires, is because of climate change.
Correct, Fox News. You're starting to get it. Congratulations. This is your Green News Report. Well, Desi Doyen, the summer right out of the gate is nothing but trouble already all across the nation, it seems.
Yes, unfortunately it is. Extreme summer heat is here early. Triple-digit temperatures prompted heat advisories across much of the South over the weekend, triggering deadly tornadoes and thunderstorms that knocked out power from Oklahoma to Mississippi. In northeast Texas, a windstorm knocked out electricity to nearly 500,000 customers amid blistering heat and stifling humidity that combined pushed the heat index above 120 degrees in some areas.
And it's only June.
Yep, and it didn't help matters when a nuclear power plant was taken offline, but clean energy came to the rescue. A brand new backup battery system installed just a week prior stabilized the grid and prevented a broader blackout.
Very nice.
Plus, according to University of Houston professor Ed Hurst,
our solar capacity has grown dramatically over the last 2 years. That's really helping us out right now.
Well, you're welcome, Texas.
The record-setting heat wave across the South is forecast to persist for several days, further straining electric grids. Mexico is also grappling with record-shattering early-season heat that has disrupted its national games underway this week, with several athletes already hospitalized with heat stroke after temperatures there topped 122 degrees.
122 degrees.
Yes. In other news, Kansas, the nation's biggest producer of wheat, is bracing for the worst wheat crop in 60 years. AP reports that many farmers in Kansas are abandoning their crops due to a combination of severe, persistent drought and high fertilizer and fuel costs. Southwest Kansas is currently one of the nation's driest areas right now, according to the U.S. Drought Monitor.
Oh, when everything is dry, it's climate change, isn't it, Des?
It is. In the Atlantic Ocean, hurricane season is now underway, with Storm Brett brewing amid unprecedented hot ocean temperatures that meteorologists say are more reminiscent of early August. And right on cue, another insurance company has exited the state of Florida.
Flex it.
Farmers Insurance Group says it has stopped issuing new homeowners property coverage in Florida, citing the high cost of reconstruction after last year's very expensive Hurricane Ian. Over the last 2 years alone, 15 insurance companies have left the Florida market.
Wow, you had warned about that years ago. And when those insurers leave the market, who takes their place? The state? Taxpayers?
Yep. But the most severe ocean heat wave on Earth right now is in the North Sea. Waters around the UK and Ireland are seeing temperatures several degrees above normal, which scientists warn poses serious threats to marine species by disrupting the marine food web and oxygen, because warmer water holds less dissolved oxygen.
Oh, and I'm sure you're going to blame that on climate change, too.
Yeah.
Oh.
But some good news. The United Nations on Monday adopted the first ever legally binding treaty to protect marine life and biodiversity in international waters known as the high seas. The treaty allows for the creation of vast marine sanctuaries protected from destructive human activities and establishes ground rules for resource extraction, like proposed deep seabed mining. But first, it must be internally ratified by at least 60 governments to enter into force and become a legally binding instrument. Finally, in the U.S., renewable electricity has hit a major new milestone. A new analysis of federal data finds that wind and solar generated more electricity than coal, a lot more, in the first half of 2023. It's the first time ever that wind and solar have outpaced Old King coal over a full 5-month stretch without factoring in hydroelectric power. Energy experts say the milestone illustrates how quickly the U.S. electricity sector is transforming despite numerous structural hurdles.
Nice. See you, Cole. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find, follow, and share us planet-wide on the Facebooks, Twitters, and Mastodons at Green News Report.
Are you tired of think tank-approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So big fun on the House floor today as gun fetish Barbie and Marjorie Three Names went after it. Evidently called her a little female dog. Evidently this is what Marjorie Three Names called gun fetish Barbie. A little three-legged dog. No, a little female dog. I can't say the other word. You know what I'm getting at. All because they have competing impeachment bills. Yeah, the crazy is taking over. And look, as I said from the beginning, I wanted Kevin McCarthy to get the speakership. I wanted him to have the ulcers. I wanted him to think of these two idiots going at each other all the time. I wanted this for him. And now he has had it. And here to share some thoughts on the big day, I've asked our good friend Pete Dominic to come talk with us. Pete is a stand-up comic, also host of Stand Up with Pete Dominic. You can find that at standupwithpetedominic.com and wherever you find your favorite podcasts. I'll get that as well. Pete, thanks for taking time for us.
Rick, I will always take time with you, and it was a crazy day in Washington. There's a lot of action because you had the censorship, or one might look at it differently as like a badge of honor of Adam Schiff by these crazy people. And then you had John Durham being questioned as well, which of course obfuscates other hearings. There was an important Senate hearing as well. But yeah, and then of course the fight that you just mentioned. So a lot to talk about today. A lot happened today. But I think it's really important. You and I are old enough. You're older than me, but we're old enough to remember that John Boehner had to deal with these psychos, and he's like, well, yeah, I'm out of here. I'm going to go work for a marijuana company. and then who comes in? Mr. Serious, policy wonk, yeah. Paul Ryan, who to me was always a mendacious, terrible, corrupted person in ideology, to say it nicely. And I always said he was an extremist, and then he takes over, and then he has to deal with even crazier people. Yeah. And then he says, peace, I'm out of here. And he goes to work in the private sector, takes some big cushy job. And also, I think, on the board of Fox News, right? And now you're left with all hollow barrel. Kevin McCarthy stands for nothing, has no principles, will sell out to anybody. He's a pilot fish's pilot fish. And now he can't obviously control these people either. And they're tearing each other apart. In the meantime, Democrats are as good as I've ever seen them. They are as together as I've ever seen them. They are as rhetorically, I think, on target as we could ever imagine. It used to be these old, like, Gerald Nadler types. He's still there, believe it or not, 120. But now you've got so many people out there, from Hakeem Jeffries to AOC to Daniel Goldman and Jared Moskowitz. There's like dozens of amazing speakers who are very, very good, and they were good today. Jamie Raskin. I mean, I could go on and on. What are your thoughts?
No, they were great today, but here's the thing: it's kind of hard not to be, given the material that's being handed.
I hear
to them.
you.
You as a comedian looking at this, going, "This is gold." Seeing these two idiots, gun fetish Barbie and Marjorie Three Names at each other over, they're going to try and impeach the president that there's no basis for, but I was waiting for a slap fest. And then that Durham hearing, my goodness, the level of red hat was just remarkable to me. So from your perspective as a comedian, this has got to be gold.
Well, listen, if you want to have a serious conversation about it. The truth is, you can't do comedy about politics hardly any more because people can't stand it. So, for comedy on social media, yeah, but and there is plenty to talk about, obviously, but it's just a constant party of contradictions, Rick, and that's always funny because you can always turn these things into a joke. Today, John Durham didn't even understand what Matt Gaetz described to him, the Washington Generals who always lose to the Harlem Globetrotters. They're paid to lose. And he explained that it was so insulting, so disrespectful, Matt Gaetz, to this guy, John Durham, that, I don't think he was expecting that. He thought Republicans brought him up there, and he was shot. He was a wreck, just an absolute wreck there. And it was a terrible day for Republicans. The idea that they censored Adam Schiff, and of course, George Santos is out to do whatever he wants. We're going to find out more about him later this week, who paid for his bail. And that they didn't realize that censoring only made Adam Schiff much like Obi-Wan Kenobi when he was struck down. Adam Schiff should have said, "If you censor me today, I'll be more powerful than ever before."
No, the first thing he did, man, is they sent out fundraising emails. He's going to raise a ton of money off of this, and they're going to put him in the Senate. This could put him in the Senate.
There are two women that would both make awesome senators that are running California. They're both congresswomen as well, Katie Porter and Barbara Lee. They'd both be great, but they would kill, both of them, to be censured by this Republican House because the attention that it's given him and the money that it's raising for him. And, listen, Adam Schiff, I don't know what you think about him. I think he's a superstar. I think that he has a memory for details, and he has a mind and understanding of law. He's a former, I think, DA and constitutional law. He's a brilliant guy, and it's just a real dumb thing to go after him, I think.
No, but here's the thing, and I'm glad you framed this way, because we're in this world, Pete, and you know this as well as anyone, where you've got on one side really smart people with credentials. They've done stuff. And then you've got people over here like Marjorie Three Names and Gun Fetish Barbie and the rest of them who have not.
Yeah.
And now we're supposed to say they're equal, and they're not. I'll bring up the Joe Rogan thing, which to me is just incredible. The fact that there's a big to-do about putting Professor Hotez on the same platform with someone like a kook like RFK Jr. To me, that... And I've had people go, well, what's wrong with them debating? Just because Professor Hotez has got a PhD doesn't mean he really knows anything. Yes, it does. It means he knows a lot.
Well, he's got more than just a PhD. Peter Hotez is a good friend of mine, and I had him on my show on Monday. And when it comes to intellect, first of all, when it's Democrats in the House versus Republicans, or even in media, the type of language and the type of vocabulary that you hear from Democrats, it's like Shakespeare versus cave people. I'm not saying that anybody who has a more extensive vocabulary is necessarily more intellectual, but it's a decent bet often that when it comes to argument. But then the opposite side of that is you could be really good at arguing and have a great extensive vocabulary, including for medical terminology, and have no idea what you're doing when it comes to talking about science and win a debate. And therein lies the issue. You can be a smooth talker and know some terminology, which is what RFK Jr. is. RFK Jr. is just
he's a kook.
More respectful version of Alex Jones. They're saying the same things. It's just that RFK is a Kennedy, and he has this voice issue as well as Alex Jones, but they're both, caricatures of human beings and performers. But the point is, RFK versus Hotez, RFK wins every time because Peter Hotez isn't a debater. He's a scientist. He's doing science. He's peer reviewing things. He's researching. He's in a lab. He's creating life-saving vaccines. And RFK is going to say something and make something up and say something like, 10,000 studies prove this. What could Hotez say? No, they don't?
Yeah.
It's
in every one of these situations, Pete, the guy with the hammer wins. If you're willing to tear something down, the guy with the hammer always wins.
Yeah. Well, it's easy to win a debate by being a kind of a smooth talker. I mean, I've been a part of many debates my entire career. I've watched debates, Intelligence Squared debates, Oxford-style debates, and you got to get two people that are of equal stature, education, credibility, not someone who's a great comedian and a smooth talker versus, I talked to Hotez this week, and he said that Neil deGrasse Tyson recently did one of these debates with somebody, and he said he didn't look good. Tyson clearly knew what he was talking about a lot more, but he didn't look good. Scientists, they want to get into the nuance. They want to have longer answers. And what Hotez said was, my opinion is that Neil deGrasse Tyson having a debate with some street person sets us back. Yep. Just the idea that you're having it raises the level of the street person. In that case, by the way, me. Like, I interview experts all day, every day, scientists, people who are actually doing gain-of-function research, virologists, whatever. But that doesn't mean I could debate any of them. If the arrogance is... I don't even understand where people get this idea that they think they know more than a scientist. Even if it's not a good scientist, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know how to do research. You can't read an abstract. You've never conducted a study, and it's
where you're wrong, Pete. I did my research. I was sitting on the can watching that YouTube video. I know.
No, but you could go Google anything you want, and you can find a study that will tell you you can grow a tail, Rick, and I can grow my hair back. I could find a study. I could even find a supplement. I could find a research paper that's going to say the way for me to grow a tail and my hair back is to take fish oil pills. I could find that study, and then I could go disseminate it across social media and to all my friends. That's not how it works.
Why do I have to get the tail, Pete?
Well, I wasn't sure what you want. I wasn't sure what you wanted to change about your physical body. I made an assumption, and it was unfair. I apologize. I take it back.
Why do I get the tail? I don't want a tail.
It was a functional tail. It was like you could swing from trees.
I could whip people with it?
You could hit people, for sure. You could use it as a weapon. It's got spikes on it. You can make it whatever you want, this study says.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. Here, Pete Dominick, stand-up comic, also podcaster. StandUpWithPeteDominick.com, the website if you want to check out the work that he does there. Also, make sure you get his podcast, one of my favorite out there. Now, here's the thing, and this is what bothers me. I mean, I look at Rogan, and I've listened. I like him. I don't like him. I don't have any visceral hatred or love. He is what he is. But to platform someone like this and to create this kind of environment, we talked about the blood-brain barrier and how Wi-Fi is killing us, and how it was just one of these things where you're scaring the dim. You're getting the dim all worked up to the point to where, as I'm sure Professor Hotez told you, someone showed up at his freaking house.
Yeah, I saw that. I had talked to him just like an hour before that. As a matter of fact, privately we were talking, and then right after that, that's what happened. Listen, I disagree with you on Joe, and I know Joe, and I like Joe personally. Has been really good to me. I mean, we came up in comedy together, and after I lost my gig at Sirius, he had me on a show to help me launch my podcast. It was a really amazing thing, and I thought our conversation was great. But something happened with COVID. And when he went to Spotify, and the kind of what he sees as the canceling of a lot of comedians and other men. And I'd love to talk to him about it. I'd love to hear more what he thinks about it. But, Peter Hotez knows Joe too. He'd been on the show 3 times. He'd privately messaged Joe several times. He told me, and you can listen to him on my podcast, talk about this timeline. And Joe didn't return his messages, and he didn't have him back on. What does that say? What kind of person then will do that, and also then platform these people? Like, what happened to him? So I do judge Joe now, and I think he's doing a lot of dangerous, irresponsible things on a regular basis, and I think it's very, very dangerous what he's doing. People are dying as a result, have died. Thousands, at least 200,000 people, Hotez says, and the studies show, died as a result of not getting a vaccine when they had easy and free access to it. They would have lived. And it's because of this kind of platforming, of these kinds of opinions. And there's no basis in truth to it. Vaccines are miracle drugs. The COVID vaccines are even more miraculous because of how quickly they were developed. They're not killing people. They are saving people. And the idea that we are demonizing And by the way, Hotez developed his own vaccine at Baylor University, he and his team. And they should be nominated for a Nobel Prize for it because that vaccine was rolled out in developing countries like Bangladesh and in India and Botswana and other countries in Africa, and it saved millions of kids' lives. And guess what he didn't do? Patent it. No. Anybody that wants to recreate it, they can use it. They can have it. Who paid for that? The university paid for it and an NIH grant. No corporate shills, which is what they're calling him. He made a life-saving vaccine, and people are calling him a murderer. It's the world we live in.
No, and it's a scary world we live in, and that's why I brought it up. Look, I don't know Rogan, I don't follow him that much, but I do see the clips occasionally. And as I said from the beginning, there's only one way that Hotez would go down, and that is negatively, because all they would want to do is get that moment of honesty where he said, well, where scientists get into being honest and long-winded, and all they would take is the 30-second bit of honesty that they would then use against them.
One of the things that didn't get as much attention, and it came back up, Joe reshared this part of it, is Joe Rogan had Peter Hotez on, and they were talking about vaccines and their effectiveness. This is before COVID, I think this one was. And Joe basically was ridiculing Peter for not being healthier. He said, Peter admitted, I don't eat very well, and I eat too much, and I don't take good enough care of myself. And Joe said, well, why don't you do that? Why don't you, wouldn't that be, he was trying to make a point, Joe Rogan, and people are, that a vaccine scientist who created a life-saving vaccine not taking great care of himself is somehow a good argument or a good point.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought it was sad and pathetic and cruel to say that to somebody, to juxtapose getting a vaccine and eating healthy. One of those things is the easiest thing in the world. I mean, put it this way. Imagine if we could all be extremely healthy by just getting an injection or taking a pill. I mean, by the way, there are a lot of pills and treatments that we do take that make our lives much better. Guess who makes them? Pharmaceutical companies, which I'll never defend, and they're easy to criticize, but they make people's lives a lot healthier and better and save your lives in a lot of ways too. It's a nuanced conversation and it matters, but the idea that you're going to sit here and say, oh, why don't you take better care of yourself? You're sitting here telling people to get vaccinated, and meanwhile you eat bad food. What? Food? What are we doing? Food is an addiction. Like, everybody has issues around food. It's a preposterous notion to say that it's easy to eat well. It's easy to get a vaccine and not die. It's the easiest thing I've ever did or done to not die was getting jabbed.
Yeah. No, look, I had several people wish me dead here recently because I finally contracted COVID, and it was not fun. But I was glad I got the vaccine and the booster. I think it's what helped me get through it. But I was amazed at the number of people who wished me ill, and I want to remind you, didn't work.
I apologize for those texts.
Last question I got for you. I look at RFK Jr. Well, I see him as just a kook, going to be speaking at the Maniacs for Liberty group in Philadelphia. Those Mom for Liberty idiots.
Oh no, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, by the way,
is there a moment where we finally realize that there are some kooks on the Democratic side too?
I mean, there's no kooks that are lawmakers in the United States Senate or House. So if you want to say that there are people who identify as members of the Democratic Party that are kooks, sure, fine. Yes, let's define kook. But there are no anti-vaxxers in the House or in the Senate. There's no climate change deniers. There's nobody that wants to take your voting rights away. There's nobody in the House or Senate or any state house that's a Democrat that does not think Joe Biden won the election. I classify kooks as Earth 1 and Earth 2. Those that believe in reality and live in reality, and those who don't. Are people that identify as Democrats sometimes that? Yeah. But you can't show me a kook in the House or the Senate in 2023 that believes in crazy conspiracy theories, that doesn't believe that things that are happening happened. I mean, I don't think you'll find any. I
agree with you. It's a good definition. Like it. Earth 1 and Earth 2. It's an interesting way of putting it. But Pete, as always, great stuff. I appreciate you taking some time for us. Hope folks will check out the podcast, Stand Up with Pete Dominick, standupwithpetedominick.com, the website.
By the way, Earth 1 is the Earth on fire. Earth 2 is not having any issues with climate at all. It's great.
Okay.
Burn it up.
All right. There we go. Pete, I appreciate the time, man. Thanks so much.
Thank you, buddy.
Good stuff. Pete Dominick. Make sure you check out the website, standupwithpetedominick.com. Going to take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. For working people. Come to talk.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So some good news. On Monday, the president and the administration is going to be going around the country saying, hey, you know what? We did this. Look what we've been doing. The road show will begin on the 26th. Going to travel across multiple states, pointing out the fact that through the American Rescue Plan, through the bipartisan infrastructure law, the CHIPS and Science Act, also the Inflation Reduction Act, lots of investments going into projects that are being built, new roads, new bridges, chip manufacturing plants, new clean energy investments, new manufacturing returning, things they should have been doing all along, as I've been saying. They now have a website that I didn't know about, and I think because of the Shapiro thing, and good on Shapiro for the live feed of the construction being done on I-95. The website invest.gov. You can see all the projects that are going on and the investments happening in communities across the country. Good stuff. Got to highlight this. Got to get out there and point out, and I'm still going back to my 20-foot cardboard cutouts of Joe Biden pointing, going, I did that. And pointing out the reality that Republicans all along this way. Now remember, the whole debt debacle, the whole debt ceiling debacle was all about gutting these investments. It was all about repealing provisions of investing in the future. And I would argue, quite simply, all politically motivated. It's not that Republicans don't want to invest in infrastructure. They don't. They don't do it. They may say they do. I mean, we went through 4 years of Trump having every week being infrastructure. We didn't put a shovel in the ground. Well, he did at Foxconn. That was supposed to be, what was it, like a gazillion million jobs, and turned out to be a handful. Their policies don't bring us anything. Biden's actually doing the work. And, going across the country into these states where things are getting done, I think important. And I think having the kind of feed like we saw earlier on I-95, I think that stuff's important. I think the visuals are important. And then talking about the jobs that are being created. The fact that federal money is being used in these projects means prevailing wage laws are enforced, means workers are getting good wages, good benefits, good conditions. There's a floor under their feet, and that money is then going back into the local economy and reverberating through. This is good stuff. The faster we roll out more of it, the better. But all we hear from our Republican friends are austerity, cut, slash, burn. Make government so small we can drown it in the bathtub. This is where you got to tell the other side of this story. The investments that are going to be made and how they're going to benefit us. So good on the administration. Invest.gov, the website. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On On this day in labor history, the year was 1877. That was the day that 10 Irish miners were hung in Pennsylvania. They were part of a group of 20 who had been sentenced to death for allegedly being part of the Molly Maguires, a group of alleged radical Irish miners. Miners were on strike in the Schuylkill County anthracite coal region. The Mollies were accused of perpetrating violence and murder against the mine owners. Newspapers helped to rile up anger against the striking Irish miners. A Pinkerton detective infiltrated the group, and his testimony doomed those he accused to the gallows. Since the hangings, many have questioned his testimony and the cases made against the miners. But at the time, many newspapers celebrated the hangings. On the day of the executions, the New York Tribune called the men, quote, the wild beasts of the collieries of eastern Pennsylvania. The Carbon Advocate of Lehighton, Pennsylvania, declared the majesty of the law has been vindicated. The community breathes more freely now that these men who feared neither the laws of God or man have met their doom. The day has gone down in labor history as the Day of the Rope, or Black Thursday. The message of the hanging was meant to be sent to all who would dare stand up against the mine owners. In 1979, the governor of Pennsylvania posthumously pardoned John Blackjack Kehoe, one of the alleged leaders of the Molly.
Down the mines, no sunlight shines, those pits, they're black as hell. In mud and slime, they do their time. It's Paddy's prison cell, and they curse the day they try.
Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
The six-person majority of far-right Supremes, who presently dominate America's judicial system, seems intent on demonstrating that having a seat on our Supreme Court does not mean there is anything supreme about them. Consider one bottom-line measure of character that is central to the court's integrity: financial ethics. This simply requires the judges to file annual reports to reveal any sources of outside income and gifts, thus providing some minimal assurance to regular folks that the eminences are not taking personal payments from moneyed interests seeking favorable court rulings. But unlike all other top government officials, Supreme Court justices have a loosey-goosey system for reporting financial conflicts of interest. It's called Trust Us. Thus, for years, Clarence Thomas has been taking millions of dollars worth of gimmies from a right-wing corporate billionaire while voting to impose this benefactor's plutocratic agenda as the law of the land. Yet, in 2 decades of financial reports to the people, there is not a whisper from His Supremeness that he has regularly pocketed a wealth of gratuities from this special friend. Or take John Roberts, the Chief Justice, who poses as a paragon of judicial independence while aggressively pressing an agenda of corporate supremacy over the common good. While he's not known to take payments from corporate interests, his wife does. She's been paid millions of dollars in commissions to recruit lawyers for firms that have business before Justice Roberts. Yet, until this special interest enrichment of his family was recently uncovered, Roberts never mentioned it in his annual reports. Meanwhile, every federal official must agree to abide by a code of ethical behavior, with the exception of 9 officials who have exempted themselves, saying, "Trust us." Yes, the Supremes. This is Jim Hightower saying, since the court refuses to fix itself, the people must. To help, go to fixthecourt.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So the insurrectionist on January 6th who jammed a stun gun into the neck of Michael Fanone pled guilty to felony conspiracy, obstruction of an official proceeding, tampering with documents, inflicting bodily injury on officers using a deadly or dangerous weapon. 12 and a half years he's going to get in prison. And, on the way out the door, evidently, he shouted, "Trump won!" On a certain level, you got to give him credit to being committed to the cause. And committed he shall be. for the next 12 and a half years. He's going to be a guest of the state, and good. I'm sure he will enjoy his time. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the fun and the entertainment in Congress today. I've asked our good friend, former Ohio Congressman and political analyst Bob Ney, to come share some thoughts. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you, Rick.
So they censured Adam Schiff. Thoughts?
Well, the previous censure, I think, was when Paul Gosar, Arizona Republican, posted an anime when the media depicted him killing Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I think it might have included Biden, I forget. Previous to that, there were some censures. I remember right after I left, Congressman Rangel, that was for some tax, forms and things. Schiff has been the target, of course, for, quite a while, and they say he abused his position on the Intel Committee. I think this kicks it to the Ethics Committee now, unless I'm wrong. I think it kicks it over there.
Yeah, but this, and look, I'm not an expert on this by any chance, which is the reason I asked you to come and share some thoughts. This is him, he's using his committee to investigate something. This is, for me, this seems like you're doing something in an official capacity. If this is the case, if we're going to go after him for doing this and being, even if you agree that he was overzealous, shouldn't we be going after Jim Jones for all, or Jim Jordan for all the Benghazi nonsense?
Well, I mean, we can go after a whole history of people, forever. I mean, going back to, of course, McCarthy did abuse, the committee. But, if they start down these paths, then, anybody that does something when they chair a committee or maybe a ranking member could be up for grabs, of course, they called the resolution false and defamatory, and they were saying, of course, McCarthy was saying that he abused his position. If it goes to the Ethics Committee, they've got to see that, he either did or he didn't abuse his position, and if he didn't, then he got censured for having a different opinion, and I think all of these things that have been going on, even throwing, some people off committees that I don't like some of the people that got thrown off of a committee, but if I was there, I don't think I would want them thrown off committees because we have different opinions, and this has been happening here in the last X amount of years in modern times.
I agree with you, and we agree on the fact that Marjorie Three Names shouldn't have been thrown off her committees, especially because she's an idiot, and I want her there so I can point to her and go, "This is the reason we need X, Y, and Z." But that's a whole nother thing. But I want to get your thoughts. Evidently there's some talk that McCarthy has lost control. There was the little dust up between Marjorie Three Names and Gun Fetish Barbie, where Marjorie Three Names called Boebert a female dog, a little female dog. It's the best I can get to the actual wording. Has he lost control, do you think? Or did he ever have control?
This has been going on, Marjorie Three Names, I do call her that now, by the way, as a result of hearing you say it, got into that dramatics. Then she was outside the Capitol. There was a Democrat member from New York, I can't remember his name, and they were going back and forth, and I seriously thought both of them needed to go inside the Capitol, It was name calling, and you should resign, and no, you should resign. And it's just, to me, it's getting old. There's so many problems in America. The whole thing's getting old. At some point in time, McCarthy's got to try at least to settle this stuff down. I know, they can say, well, we do what we want. We're elected. Well, that doesn't mean you destroy the decorum of the place. And at some point in time, at least when I was there, if people did certain things that were way out of whack, then the prospective party leaders would call them in and say, look, free country, but you don't need to be doing these things. And it's a distraction. And if McCarthy doesn't step in and do something, he's just going to have continuing mounting problems, especially between his own members.
Yeah. Now, if I'm the speaker, if I'm looking at Marjorie Three Names and Gun Fetish Barbie having this little dust up, I just point them to the cloakroom. Go back there, deal with however you have to, and whenever you come out, you better be smiles. If one of you are bloody, then that's fine. But at the end of the day, behind the door, you figure this stuff out, and then you come back out. But we're not that society anymore. Now it's all about getting the social media clicks and getting the attention. And why were they arguing? Because evidently they think that their competing impeachment bills are going to land them on the F channel or the podcast circuit.
Well, I think if you look at the two members yesterday, two of them were thrown out, one Democrat and one Republican in Virginia. Both of them were in the state legislature. Both of them tended to be people that, did the Marjorie Three Names stuff and, said things and the whole drama. And both of their opponents ran against them saying, we're going to be the drama-free people that do our job. And they both were ousted. So, it may play well. Boebert barely won her election. That should have taught her a lesson. Marjorie, I don't know her district. I don't know if they will grow tired of this eventually or not. But it's so theatrical and so overboard. And maybe I'm just getting old and I just say, well, in my day, but I've got to tell you, this stuff did not happen out there to this level. Yeah. Years back. This is now political entertainment. They're trying to get their day in the sun or their 5 minutes in the news or whatever. And I think it's just totally wrong.
Yeah, and what's happening is we're not getting things done. This is why I love what Biden's doing. I'll be honest, I love what Joe Biden's doing. It's about getting the job done. As I said a moment ago, on Monday, they're going to get back out on the road, talking about investing in the country and all the projects that are going on. Also, he's been hammering, and I want to get your thoughts on this, because he's been hammering on these junk fees and all this stuff. In fact, he tweeted out today, you shouldn't have to pay an extra $50 to sit next to your child on a plane, pay a surprise resort fee at a hotel to stay, pay $200 to terminate your cable plan, or huge service fees to buy concert tickets. That's why my administration is taking action to curb them. I mean, this may sound like a small thing, but it's an action. It's getting something done. It's moving us, I think, in a direction that's going to help working people, whereas the sideshow we see in Congress just shows me that they're devoid of ideas and any interest in helping people. I'm looking at Biden going, this may be a small thing, but I think this is gonna resonate with people.
With the airlines?
Yeah, I mean, with all the stuff, yourself. If you want to book an extra, you want to book your seat, you got to pay for extra baggage. You got to pay for a seat that you want. You want concert tickets. The service fees are outrageous. Every time you turn around, someone's nickel and diming you to death with all of these idiotic fees that are hidden, that are not hidden. I mean, it's at some point, I think he's onto something that I hope moves us in a direction where we stop getting nickel and dimed to death.
Well, yeah, he's on to something. Look, he mentioned this in the State of the Union, of course, and he used the example, rebooking fees as much as $200 a ticket. Rick, as you know, I recently went to India. And in the past, when something came up, my dad got sick, with the American air carriers, I called and I had to move my flight one day, and I did it in plenty of time, which allows them to sell the seats, especially international seats. They sell. There's waiting lists. And my charge was, I think, $250 to $300 and some dollars to move that day.
Wow.
Of my flight. This time I booked Air India. I had to move the entire flight twice, and Air India's charge was $5.50. A technical fee. And I was like, wow, how can they do it? But, our American air carriers can't.
Because we got to pad the bottom line, Bob. It's about the profit.
Yeah, they nickel and dime you to death. I mean, I used to fly all the time. I mean, it's just, you're nickel. It's gotten worse, though.
Bob, that's now you're showing your age. Nickel and dimed. They're not nickel and diming. These are 20s and 50s now.
Well, yeah, they're $1 and $10 enough now,
I mean, it's highway robbery. Look, I wanted to get tickets for my kids to see a concert, and the fees and all the charges and the convenience fees and the service fees and all this stuff, almost the exact price of the ticket. I mean, it's insane to me, and it's a giant ripoff. And I guess again, I'm sounding old, but I remember when you could go to the box office and buy the freaking ticket from the location. They've got such a monopoly on this stuff that someone's got to do something about it. Again, this is why I think Biden's on to something, because I know a lot of people are frustrated by this.
Well, I think the president's on to something, number one. And I'll tell you where I'd like to see him go with this further. As you know, I flip houses, and certain products and prices went sky high. Then when the supply chain or the food chain got corrected, guess what? It never went down at all.
Yeah.
And I'd like to see somebody look into it, because I think it just all went into manipulation through corporate profits. That's what I think.
And this is where I go. If we had a functional Congress, if we had functional people in the House and people in the Senate who gave a rat's behind about working people, we would have already had these commissions looking into this stuff. We would have had today's Harry Trumans. We would have had the Teddy Roosevelts and the trust busters breaking up these monopolies. We'd have this if we had a functional system.
Right. Focusing on issues versus theatrics.
Yep. No, I'm right there with you. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show with Bob Ney, former Ohio congressman, political analyst. Got to get your thoughts on the Durham hearing today. Nothing new in my view. I guess depends. As I said at the beginning, whichever hat you're wearing, the red hat or the blue hat, insert your talking points here. Kind of what it was. Anything for you in that Durham hearing?
Yeah, I thought it was all over the board. I thought the most responsible comment on the Democratic side was Representative Jim Hines of Connecticut. He's the committee's top-ranking Democratic member. First, he said reforms are needed, which I believe they are. I could give you a lot of examples. And then he said he believes the committee can work together to address the issues. Well, I don't know. Good luck on that one. But he confined it to the FBI and the FISA court, which the FISA court needs looked at. It's been a rubber stamp. But Hines added that the Durham report didn't find politicization within the FBI, but it found confirmation bias, which is not good. So I thought that was the balance that was needed. Now, it was weird, though, Rick, because on one hand, here's Durham, and then he gets criticized for, sticking up for Barr, but yet Durham didn't come out with the report that really the Republicans wanted.
Right.
He really didn't.
No, there was nothing there.
They wanted a lot more. So I felt Durham was just going to get it from both sides, on the thing. But I thought that Jim Hines made some really good comments. There wasn't politicization. So when Durham was attacked pretty bad, I thought, okay, well, wait a minute, he didn't find politicization. So it's come and gone. It's done. As far as going in and doing away with the FBI and the DOJ, Republicans aren't going to be able to do that. So that probably leads to where they'll maybe try to tweak it. But again, let me just throw this out here. How on earth do you tweak a system right now with everything that's going on in the federal court system and with Trump? It doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Not now.
Yeah.
Not right now.
What do you think of Trump's defense, his latest defense that's come out, evidently answering a question to Brett Baer saying, the reason I had those classified documents is they were in boxes with my stuff in it. My stuff clearly more important than your stuff. I didn't have time to go through it all. So yeah, I mean, maybe they were in there, but it was my stuff.
Well, I think the Brett Baer interview in itself was fascinating.
Yeah.
Brett Baer asked the question about the people that Trump, in one hand said, I've got the best in the world. Then he called them idiots and lunatics and crazy people and everything else. A lot of people went to the media to the right and were all over Fox News for asking this question this way. Well, I thought it was appropriately asked. And then Trump's answer on the material is going to be what we're going to see, which is, well, I don't know. I was president. You think I opened boxes and moved them? Somebody else did it. We're gonna hear this.
Yeah, interesting. Finally, I want to get your thoughts on the. They haven't found the submersible little submarine that went down to the Titanic yet, have they?
Oh, the submergible.
Yeah.
No, that's such a sad thing, because I was just thinking today, the intensity of the people within that submersible and what they must be going through, and I was shocked at the price. It's $250,000 for that venture in that, and the CEO of the company is the pilot of it. And the problem with the submersible, of course, is it's not able, if it's in trouble, to come back on its own. It's not like a submarine.
Yeah.
It has to get to the mothership. So as of the last time I checked, there's nothing new. They heard some kind of sound, but they couldn't follow it.
Yeah, I mean, now I'm getting all of these interviews. Hey, what must they be going through? What psychologically, what are they thinking? They're thinking, how do I get the heck out of here?
Right. Well, yeah, and because somebody was saying today that the press will, continue on with this for a while, as the press does, and then they will move to something else.
Yeah, this is one of those things where the fact that there's a billionaire on board, I think, is the reason that we've got so much attention. If it were you or me, Bob, I don't think it had made the headlines.
No, maybe not.
No, and people would be mocking us. How dare you use secondhand parts to go thousands of feet underground? How dare you use refurbished stuff to go thousands of feet underwater? It's lowest.
Well, if it was me and you, they would say we deserve it.
Yeah,
so.
As I said, lowest bid got the contract. But Bob, I appreciate the time as always. Great stuff, my friend.
Thank you.
Bob Ney, former Ohio Congressman, political analyst. I want to get your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. We'll take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1877. It became known in Pennsylvania labor history as the Day of the Rope. 20 Irish miners were hung for allegedly belonging to a secret group of labor radicals known as the Molly Maguires. The Mollies trace their history back to Ireland in the 1840s. The story goes that an Irish woman by that name stood up to the English landlords. Men fighting for Irish rights would declare themselves Sons of Molly Maguire. To what extent this secret organization actually operated in the United States is debatable. Irish workers who came to the United States often faced harsh discrimination. Many job sites would announce, "Irish need not apply." One place they did find work was in the often dangerous Pennsylvania coal mines in Schuylkill County. Franklin Goins, president of the Reading Railroad, controlled the mines in the 1870s. In late 1874, he announced a wage cut of 20%. The miners went out on strike. During the strike, the Mollies were accused of sabotaging the mines and even murdering mine supervisors. The mine operators quickly blamed any act of violence in the region on the Molly Maguires. Determined to infiltrate the Mollies, Gowen hired the notorious Pinkerton detectives. The Pinkertons sent in Irish-American James McParlin under an alias to attempt to join the group. Based on his testimony, 20 miners were hung for murder. They were found guilty even though much of the testimony presented in the case was inconclusive and contradictory. In 1979, the governor of Pennsylvania posthumously pardoned John Blackjack Kehoe, one of the alleged leaders of the Mollies. In 1970, Sean Connery starred in a movie based on the story. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2. Some new polling out on renewable energy, and this comes at a critical time as we're expanding our coastlines, our coastline power generation. We should have wind farms off of all of our coasts to generate generate the power that we need. I've talked to people who said, look, we have the capacity to be energy independent if we would just do it. Between windmills and solar panels and all of the other technology that's out there, we could have a renaissance, 21st century energy renaissance. Now, does that mean we're going to replace fossil fuels? No, entirely no. But it means we're going to slow the demand, maybe even lessen it a little bit, which is going to make us a little bit better off. But this latest polling out says that by a margin of 2/3, 47% margin, 2/3 of voters support building offshore wind energy that have strong labor protections. 66% support, 19% oppose. Oddly enough, 16% don't know. A solid demographic. Democrats 75%, independents 36%. 16% Republicans, which again, you go, what is this love of fossil fuels? And I've had this conversation with people. It's almost like the more we say we want to move away from it, the more they cling to it, because it's almost a birthright. And look, I love my car as much as anyone. I do. I love driving. My wife and I, we love driving. Our kids love driving. We've driven thousands and thousands of miles, done cross-country tours driving. Love this. We could figure this out. This is the idea of moving in a future direction. Now, workplace safety and living wages are important. In fact, voters view those things as incredibly important. In fact, workplace safety, 89% said, yeah, we want safe workplaces. I was not surprised by that. 82% say the living wages and the benefits are important and an important requirement in doing this. And this is where, when Jay Inslee was running for president, he was talking about this just transition. And I was saying, yeah, this is what we need. We need those people who are going to lose their jobs in coal mines and in coal-fired power plants and in the gas industry. They need to get jobs that are going to replace those. We're going to need to take those skills of pipe fitters and construction workers and use them in other ways to be able to generate what we need. So those jobs are important. And Inslee's plan was, look, we need to unionize all of those jobs, make sure that those come with prevailing wages, benefits that are going to make sure that you have health and retirement security. That's a big deal. Now, interestingly enough, voters really on point with the belief that offshore wind is going to be good for the economy. Two of their top two priorities for lawmakers. By a 37% margin, they believe offshore wind energy is good for the economy. That is good, and they also believe it's good for jobs. This is one of those no-brainer things, and it should really be a no-brainer. Where across the political spectrum, we go, yeah. It would be like 150 years ago, going, no, we're not going to put the wheel on the river and create that hydroelectricity. We're not going to do that because it's going to slow down the water. Yeah, I'm literally shocked sometimes when some of my more Trumpy friends are opposed to renewable energy. And they always use the talking point, well, the sun doesn't always shine, wind doesn't always blow. Yeah, that's why you have batteries. That's why you create a system to store the built up energy so that you can then use it in those moments. See how that works? I think we can do it. I think we're smart enough. I think we're capable. In fact, I know we are. I want to hear your thoughts, though. Is this a direction we should be heading? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you miss any portion of the program, by all means, grab the podcast, share the podcast, comment on the podcast, like all of that. Also, the YouTubes, the Twitters, all of that on the social media. If you're there, by all means, drop by. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.